Hi. Well, I'm going to be sharing from the very first book that I found that clued me in that we had been really scammed. I liked history growing up, and I guess it was primarily dependent on your teacher and that kind of thing. But I've always enjoyed history, but I'm unfortunately probably just like you. And I've looked at the museums and read the signs everywhere and read the books, and I've believed a narrative that wasn't at all true. A narrative is really what rules us. It's not the truth, it's what we believe is the truth. And if we buy into a narrative, well, there you go. We're bound to follow that and to judge or hold everything in accountability with those principles. So it's very important that we find truth. Otherwise, we're basing our entire existence on a lie. And that's really what I feel like I did for 33 years. So what is history? This particular book is called Western Civilization up to 1500 AD. And I'm starting at the very beginning, which I did when I first started my research. And I have two of these books, so I wrote in this one. So I've got a lot of notes in here and things, a lot of aha moments, which I think you'll have also. Rather than get into what is history, because I do that in another video, let's just summarize that primarily it's the story of man, because that's the person who can write it and read it, and so it's our story, right? And figuring out what happened and using all the tools we can to do that. So we're very limited. What have we got? So if, let's just say, a man died, you go to the cemetery, you see his tombstone, and there's his name. Now, what do you know about him? You might know that he has a wife. Why? Because it's recorded right there. Or that he has a child. Or that he's a member of some family. Or maybe it has a title on there. And you could go by that, if whoever's writing the info is honest. I remember in the cemetery, I spent years in the cemetery industry. It was really funny. Lots of things were funny. I could go on and on about that for years. But one day, I went down to the funeral, and I was standing there, and a woman came up, and it was her husband, I think, that was being buried. At any rate, maybe her sister or something. At any rate, her cemetery marker had come in, and it was on the ground, which we probably did to make her happy. Well, it had her birth date on it. And she was so outraged that people at that funeral would find out how old she was, that we had to pull it up and put something over it before the funeral. Now, we live to tell stories, and we're all biased. How could we not be? We only have our perception of who we are with all that coloring and all those lenses, right? It's like a kaleidoscope, or it's kind of like a camera with 1,000 different lenses. And you don't know which one's going to come into operation or going to be available, because we see from being a child, we see from things that have happened to us, we see from the way people treat us, we see from our self-image of ourselves. Everything writes into or reads into the information that we inspect or receive, or the information that we allow to program us, right? And so you and I just, maybe not you, but me, I started out this and thinking, okay, I'll look up Aristotle. Well, Aristotle only has one name. That would be very unusual. Based on customs of history, everyone has lots of names. Everyone. I was counting Joseph's names, and I came up with 10. You've probably never heard of them. And you probably don't even know how they're associated with him or why he has that name. Because they're secrets. And people that want to protect anything that's not beautiful about their past are going to do it. And yet most of the time, some kind of historian wants to perpetuate the information in some way, right? So they do it through code and through pen names and through aliases, just like the movies. And a lot of it is, it's just based on custom. Same thing goes with calendars, which is another huge deal when you're researching history. Chronology is a series of dates of when things happen. I've yet, in 7 years, to find one that agrees with another. They don't. And this is by design, and you'll see later, but calendars are created in a way, and you go look some of them up. Look up some histories or chronologies. And I'll bet you'll find that here's the chronology of science. Here's the one of theology. Here's the one of mankind. You know why? They don't want you to cross-reference anything. Oh, no. Compartmentalization is key in deception. And we are compartmentalized in every way, shape, or form. From the minute we are born, we're put in compartments. Which nation do we go in? What color eyes? What parent nationality? And then they try and shoot us up with stuff. And we've got that criteria and programming. And who the hell knows what that does or any of it. And then our environment. Someone that's born in the creeps of, Africa. And I'm not saying all of Africa is creepy, but you know what I'm trying to say, or the jungles that, is a completely different environment than somebody being born into a family in New York. And I was thinking today about the fact that I was never asked if I wanted to go to college. I assumed that I wasn't smart enough or just wasn't of the right class. I knew my parents didn't have money, and I got married early, and that's what I thought was my life until it wasn't. And then I had to go to work, and I was desperate, and thank God I was the oldest of a lot of kids, so I worked my butt off and did 3 jobs all the time. And was proud of that, and was proud of my professional success. Meanwhile, I left my son with, fortunately for a while, my mom and grandma, and then with his dad, who was drinking a lot. And I paid a high price to feel good about what I did professionally. And so that, I don't know how I got off on this. Well, let's get back to the point. We're talking about programming. Okay, I know what my point was that now I recognize that people that come from a higher station in life read different things. They talk about different things at the dinner table, other than which sister or brother you want to smack the crap out of. And they learn to use their silverware differently, for Christ's sake. They have access to different libraries. I've had to get my information from Harvard libraries online and sometimes interpret it out of French because the normal Joe has no access to the right information or to any kind of reconciled information or ancient literature, because what you get is the Bible, because that is the program that works for thee. And it ain't you and me. It's a major, never mind, scam. Okay, so with all that said about history, one thing I have seen is that it's normally agreed that the Big Bang was 4.5 billion years ago. I think that's changed recently, but not to get into that. So this talks about hominins, and it also talks about one of the things, well, let's just say the evolution of man, meaning not evolution that, it's not saying that a frog, a tadpole's going to become a frog in our lifetime. That's not what it means. The evolution means over a long period of time, man adapts, just like a rock. Everything does. So, I used to be all, yeah, evolution, that's, science bull. I didn't even know what I was talking about. You probably don't either. That's another way that they get us with history, terminology, and compartmentalization. One word in an industry, you can say the word, I can't think of one right now, but like in electric, you can say energy in 1,000 different ways, or wave, or the other day, the word longitudinal, I can never say that word. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew what it was, but I knew it by a different name, an S word. And so it's very confusing. So when we read history, we always need to take it with a grain of salt and to make sure that we are finding the information in several different sources to confirm each other. Make sure you track down how many names the person has and what you're really looking for. And then see that whoever you're reading understands that calendars make a big difference. And that has caused numerous problems in our past, like 2012. They thought was the end of an age because the Mayan calendar didn't reconcile or something. Okay, and then the next point I really wanted to make before I start getting into the story is that agriculture has always been, from the beginning of time, the most important endeavor of man. It's the most honorable, it feeds people, it keeps us busy, it uses the land in a productive way, and that's a point that agrarian societies always do well. And look at ours. Okay, so part one. You know what, I talked too long, so I'm going to get a drink and bring it over here and make this is 14 minutes. So I'll just say this is an intro, and when I come back in just a minute, we'll do part one. Thanks.